Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my personal overview from my experience of playing the Dark Souls 2 E3 demo at Play Expo 2013. That was held in Manchester yesterday and is actually happening again today, so there might be some lucky people going there to play right now as we speak. They will be playing it now. But I went with some friends, met up with some subscribers, and I managed to play Dark Souls 2 for 40 minutes. I had 2 sessions with the build, which is 2 20-minute sessions, and then they told you to leave, and then you queued again, and what have you. And this is just going to be some thoughts on the classes, the demo itself, and some of the mechanics that I noticed. I will not be covering the Mirror Knight, because I'm going to cover him in a separate video, because I've got quite the tale to tell of what I found against that boss. So my first experience with the demo, there were 6 of us chosen because there were 6 places, 3 stations on each side. You were taken to the front area, and there was a representative there of Namco Bandai. I don't think he actually worked for the company. I think he was just the guy at the convention, but he had a whole spiel, and he seemed to be much more passionate, shall we say, than most people that present this type of thing. And he sold the game, which I really wasn't expecting. He was giving you the sales pitch on what Dark Souls 2 is about and what the demo is about, and he explained that he even had like cheesy lines of "Are you willing to go beyond death?" and all this kind of other stuff, which I gave him some shit for, but he recovered well. And it was like, how many people here have played Dark Souls? And everybody put their hand up. He says, "Oh, so I don't need to explain too much of that to you then." So he went on to say that, you know, this is the demo where you're going to walk through, and the challenge here is to beat the Mirror Knight. The Mirror Knight is a boss that waits at the end of the demo. He's extremely difficult, and if you beat him, you get a t-shirt. He went on then to tell you about all the different pre-order versions of Dark Souls. He showed you the statue that you get with the collector's edition, which me and Heretic agreed looked pretty fucking tacky. It just didn't look good, man. It had double swords as well. It looked bad, but he was telling you about the price tags for it, and he was also saying that if you pre-ordered the game and you had proof of pre-order, you got a shirt as well, which was kind of a cool thing. And then once he'd finished explaining, 3 people went to the left, 3 people went to the right. I was on the right hand side. I think I was on the second to the last desk. I was on like the middle one, and you stood behind the person playing, who was essentially in your seat, and the person in front of me was fighting the Mirror Knight. So I've seen the Mirror Knight fight a few times. I've watched some videos online. I've seen quite a lot of this boss. But to watch it from where I was stood was so different to what I was expecting, because, you know, it was live, it was happening, and the boss is pretty damn brutal. The guy in front of me was playing as the warrior guy, you know, the dude on the cover who's got the fur collar and the big sword as a secondary with his long sword. And he wasn't a bad player. He was kind of turtling, which you're going to do in this fight, because rolling is really difficult in Dark Souls 2. He was having, you know, he was waiting for his opportunities, but the Mirror Knight really doesn't give you too many. And then he was trying to capitalise on it, and then eventually he got killed, and he put the thing down. And as he turned around, he was like, "Wow, man, that guy's tough." I goes, "Was that your first time against him?" He goes, "No, I fought him a few times." Like, oh, type deal, you know. That it looked tough. It looked like a tough fight. And he wandered off, obviously, because he's done on the demo. I sat down, quit the game before the guy came over telling me how to quit the game. And I popped my headphones on, which was super loud. Really, really loud, like Turtle Beach headphones or something. And then you were back at the start menu. So start the game, it loads in. As it does, it says, you know, like E3 build on the bottom corner or something. And then you've got your classes. So I picked the warrior because I knew I wanted to start as the warrior, because I knew he had a 100% block shield. And, you know, he's probably the archetype of Dark Souls 2. He is, you know, the dude that you go to, the first character most people will play. So I wanted to have him because he seems to be the general all-rounder. And you start the demo, as we've all seen. You didn't start outside like they've shown in previous versions of this, where they go into the building and then there's a ladder that goes down. You started in the room with the ladder. And the first thing I did, obviously, went into the menu, inverted the camera, put the camera on max sensitivity. And wow, the sensitivity's different. Like, I'm talking, if you've ever had that moment where you increase sensitivity and you touch the analog and it just goes nuts, that was that moment. And it took me a while to get adjusted to it. You know, I still wasn't adjusted it by the end of my time, but it was more sensitive than Dark Souls and more sensitive than I was expecting. But not a bad thing, just new. And that's what you've got to bear in mind. A lot of the stuff I'm going to be sharing about the game is not intrinsically bad, it's just new. And that's what you've got to look at this like. Because this is not Dark Souls, guys, this is Dark Souls 2. And that is something that you're really going to have to make a distinction with, because a lot of people are going in expecting Dark Souls, and you're not going to find it. You're going to find something that's fairly similar to what you remember, but then vastly different in really subtle ways. But the camera was, kind of crazy, kind of all over the place, and immediately the movement is really different. This character is about of medium speed, but there's a weight to the movement that Dark Souls didn't really have. A lot of people mentioned that Dark Souls has weighty combat, you feel each hit, you feel the recoil and all that kind of good stuff. And that is very true, but you never really felt too much weight on the movement until you stacked a ton of armour on and you saw, the labour in each step, but you never felt it as much. I didn't. Or maybe I've just played it too much and I'm desensitised. But this game, immediately compared to Dark Souls, it felt so much slower in the movement, so much more meticulous and laborious. Like, if you've played Demon Souls and then you go to Dark Souls, it's exactly that. The difference is, it's from Dark Souls to this, so it's even slower. And I did the running, so I held run to see what it was like, and there's a delay between getting up to speed. And there was always a kind of delay, but now it's even longer. And when he runs, he feels kind of like he's weighted as you turn. It's almost like it's nowhere near as precise. It's much more, if you've ever played a driving game that was arcadey and then a driving game that was almost a simulator, it's so much harder to turn on the simulation ones because they're trying to be realistic, and that is just how the movement felt on the run. So from the run, I did the running attack, which seemed to take forever, and it was a long animation, and I wasn't a fan at all. And then from there, I did every attack. I did a combo with the R1 on the longsword. It seemed like a standard combo. I then did the R2s, see how it affected my stamina, things like that, because you couldn't pause, so I wasn't going to mess with menus, I didn't need to. I did combos from R1 into R2 to see what that was. I did the backstep attack, I did the jump attack, I did the running attack, I did the two-handed, I did the one-handed. I didn't mess about with trying any extra stances, because I'd heard before I played it that you can hold Y and get into a unique stance. I'm not too sure if that's just the dual-wield guy or if it's for the full game, but because I didn't have much time, I didn't really mess with that too much. So I was doing all the attacks and things, noticing that the roll is obviously slow because it was a mid-roll, and just noticing how the movement felt and things, and for most, it feels kind of Dark Souls-y at that point, It's slower, it's more meticulous, you can see that a lot of attacks have got recovery now. Like the big sword that the warrior has, the two-handed greatsword, it's a great weapon, it looks good, it feels heavy, it's got some hoist on it, but you literally feel every microsecond of the recovery on it, and you're so vulnerable. Like every swing it does, it takes so much time to go back to center before you can act again, and you really, really feel it. And I was feeling it just practicing in a room with a bonfire, so when you're using it against an opponent, you're going to feel it even more, because they're attacking you, and they're aggressive, and they're so much more aggressive than they've ever been. But once I'd done all the moves, then I decided to, move into the rest of the game. But one thing I did notice, which is good news for people, you can still backstep and then do a running attack in the opposite direction, and you can still also do, I think it's the ravioli step, where if you're moving towards somebody and you flick back on the analog, you can immediately do like a 180, and then when you press B, he does a backstep into a running attack, which is kind of a PvP technique to be more creative or more, unpredictable type deal. So you can still do that, which is nice. I looked through the items on both left and right hands. I've got a bow in the left hand, aside from the shield. The bow comes up so fast. It's really strange. You don't have to press left bumper to two-hand it. When you put it on and you go to left bumper, it immediately goes to an aimer. And it threw me off because it was so quick. And I didn't really use the bow too much, but I messed with it at the beginning, and it seems like it's going to be super viable because it's just so much more fluid. Really, almost scary in how effective bows are probably going to be when somebody gets good with them, because they're so quick. And I've heard that the stamina drain on the bow is evident, which is probably going to balance them, but I didn't really take too much note, because I only fired it once, and I saw that it took my stamina. It was enough to be conscious of, but the build itself didn't have too much vitality, it didn't have too much stamina, and you're looking at 3 rolls and you were out of stamina, 3 to 4 attacks and you were out of stamina, and the recovery on the stamina seems really slow. And I don't know if that's because of the armour, I don't know what variable that is, but it's all noticeable. I was noticing everything so much. But I go forward, I hit the ladder. First thing I try to do is I hold B to slide down, and my character doesn't move. So I'm like, hang on a second. I pressed B, and nothing happened. Like, I pressed A, I like, what the fuck is happening? Nothing's happening. And when I pressed it again, my character jumped off. He jumped off the ladder and fell. I took fall damage, and I was like, wow, I knew that was going to happen. So, for whatever reason, I couldn't slide down the ladder. There's obviously an input to do it, because I know you can do it. I'm just too much of a retard to figure it out. I just dropped down, like, oh, okay, there you go. I'm going to have to learn that. And then, immediately, I know, because I've seen footage, that you move forward, and on the bridge, a guy starts walking, and a guy from your left stands up. So I already knew these things before going in. So, first guy in front of me, I attack the dude on the ground. It does no damage at all for some reason, and then he starts standing up, and then I do damage to him and kill him. That's all good and well. The second guy comes. I wait to do a parry, because I've tested the parry, and it is a little bit slower on this character. He goes to swing, I go to parry, I fuck it up, he hits me for 1/3 of my life, and then he immediately hits me again, and I'm completely stun locked. I can't toggle, there's no toggling. I'm pulling away on the analog, trying to roll away, and I manage to roll out of the 3rd attack, and then I do an Estus, and luckily enough he doesn't recover enough to hit me while I'm Estusing. Obviously, you know, Estus is much slower, but there's probably going to be a stat that makes it faster, because we've seen in the beta footage that the Phantom drinks faster than the host does. So there's going to be varying speeds of Estus drink, which could be linked to kindling, it could be linked to reinforcing them with, you know, the spirits. I'm not too sure, but the flask takes forever, and you start with 5. You start with 5 flasks and some life gems, and the entire demo is filled with life gems. Enemies drop them, all sorts of stuff drop them. So that guy beat me up a bit. One thing I did notice as well is the AI has recovery off their animations too, and it's quite long for some things, but I think it's got to be that way because it's the same with you. So it might look long because we're used to them being quicker, but you're also slower too, so it balances out. Everything takes longer. Everything seems to go on longer than it should. Everything seems to just, you know, there's something off and you're not too sure what it is, but it's the speed. So the second guy is still alive. I've just flasked. And he comes up to me again, and I'm wanting to parry, but he swings really quickly, and I wasn't expecting it. So I panic shield, and I blocked the first hit. And I don't know why I did it, but I just kind of did. I parried afterwards, like you would on a setup parry in PvP. And I nailed it. It hit him with the parry, because he was attacking so aggressively, a little bit like what Gwyn does in his 3-hit combo. And he recoiled, he laid down, and immediately I'm thinking, Epic Namebro said on the parry, apparently you've got to wait. I remembered his words, so I watched as he fell. He does like a really, you know, dramatic fall, and then he pauses and you can see it. It's an animation where it's waiting for something. So I pressed attack, and I got a riposte. I got a riposte animation. I don't remember hearing anything all that good in it, which kind of was saddening. It didn't give me the Dark Souls riposte, but he did a fancy animation. The thing was on the floor, he took his big old sword and he put it through its chest, and it killed it in one riposte, and then he pulled it back out, and there we go. I wasn't digging it, guys. I've got to say, my favourite thing in Dark Souls is riposting. I love just the sword going in, you know, putting his foot on the opponent to pull it out. I like the animation. It's my favourite thing in the game, and the new ones are not bad by any standards, and I'll probably grow to love them, but it's not the same, and it's going to take some serious adjusting. So they're in there, but they're different, and you need to be aware of this. So from this point onwards, I cross the bridge that's got the salamanders on them, and I know that there's a guy that's going to stand up there, but he only stands up when you pick up the life gem. So I go to attack him on the floor, and I don't hit him, he doesn't respond at all. So I go and pick the gem up, and he turns up, and I start fighting him. Hit him a few times, notice that he's taking 3 to 4 hits to kill, and he's got much better poise recovery or stun recovery than I do, because he's going to swing after he's done his little flinch, and he's really fast for doing it. They're kind of like a knighted undead that have got a halberd. So I'm like, you know, just slice him up a little bit. He's dead, carry on the bit, walk into the next section. There's a dude laid down on some steps. I know he's going to get up because I've seen this demo before. So I walk in, there he does, he starts getting up, and I backstab him. And the backstab is different. we all know this. It's that new animation, it's not locked in, it's not invulnerable, just like the parries. And it's kind of strange, because I didn't know I was in a backstab. I thought I'd fucked it up, actually, because there was no initiation to it, because it's so fluid now. It flows really, really well. And I only noticed it was a backstab when he waited before the third hit, because I thought I was attacking like an idiot, just like, yeah, I'll get this guy. And it knocked him down, and he took like a third damage or something like that. And he starts getting up. So I wanted to test something, because chain backstabs are something that are easy to do on the AI if you know how to pivot with them, because they auto-rotate on Dark Souls. They stand up and they face you regardless of the position of where they fell. It's just something the game does. Dark Souls 2 doesn't do this on the standard hollows. They don't do that at all. So he stood up in the exact same position that I backstabbed him in, and then I chain stabbed him and did a second backstab and it killed him. So chain stabbing hollows is easy. The timing is so different to Dark Souls because the animation priority and invulnerability is not there anymore. So as he's standing up, you know, instead of him being completely invulnerable and you're not even bothering, which is something that you didn't do on Demons, because on Demons you could hit them on the ground, but on Dark Souls we've conditioned ourselves not to do that because it's not how it worked. And on this game, as soon as he starts standing up, you can trap him in another backstab. You don't have to wait like PvP for the instance he's going to move, because if you do that, he's going to turn and you're going to miss. So chain stabs are going to be so easy to do on single opponents. But just be aware, there might be people with him and they'll hit you, so you'll be vulnerable. But I killed him, and then I got to the dark corridor. So I noticed there was the flaming candelabra thing, the torch, and he went up to it. Press X to get your torch out. I didn't have to equip it or anything, it was already part of my inventory. Started lighting it, put it on my left hand, and I went down the stairs. There's two guys to your left playing dead who I know are going to spawn, and I know there's the Turtle Knight in front of me if I go too far, so I go to the left. I do the heavy attack on the big greatsword. It hits both of them but does hardly any damage. There's like 200 damage. And because I'm using the torch, I can't two-hand, because when you put the torch out, Jesus Christ, it's pitch black. Like, I was expecting it to be dark, but I wasn't expecting it to be this dark. It's not like the Tomb of the Giants is brighter than this without any light. It's that dark, and you can't block or anything, so you've got to be aware of this. So I immediately went to do another attack, and this is where I came across the first thing I didn't understand, and that's the lock-on. Lock-on has changed drastically, but on the surface it seems the same. It's only when it does something weird that you realise you're doing something wrong. And I didn't figure it out in my entire 40 minutes with the game, but something is at play that's enabling you to do movement and actions that aren't locked while still having a locked camera. And I don't know if there's a toggle between it or what's happening, and I don't know how the inputs calculate, because I was talking to Heretic and he was saying things like, it's probably like not being locked on, but it's locked for you, so it's all about the direction of the analog and when you attack and things. And that makes perfect sense, it's logical, but that's not how it felt. Like, I've had a full experience with playing unlocked, and I know how to point an analog at an enemy and attack, but this was literally, he swung the sword in a completely different direction. Like, I gave the enemy my back while I was locked on, swinging a sword the complete opposite side of them, and I wasn't holding back, and I didn't get it at all. It just was really strange, and it made me kind of doubt the weapon for a second, and I'm like, what did I do just then that was so wrong or so different that happened? And it happened a few times in the demo, and I can't explain why, guys. So the lock-on's going to take some getting used to, and it's going to take some figuring out, but the cool thing is, it's a video I'm going to be making to help people so that they don't have to suffer or struggle with it once I've figured it and I know exactly what's doing, because it's new. It's really new and different, and it's going to get you killed a few times, it's going to make you have a few mistakes, but once you learn it, it's probably going to be so much better than what it used to be. It's just that unknown of not knowing why. So I wasn't too sure why that happened, but it kind of did. Luckily enough, I think I took one hit, I managed to roll away, I used a life gem, and then I killed those enemies. And I'd said at the beginning of this that for this first session I wasn't going to touch the Mirror Knight, I wasn't going to go anywhere near him, I was just going to learn the controls, I was going to get comfortable with the game, I was going to take my time. And I knew exactly what was in front of me. There's a dark corridor with the Turtle Knight. Behind him there is a guy stood there with a sword who can throw, I think, firebombs. Behind them is a dude with a bow who might be able to throw firebombs as well. One of them does. And then there's a door that leads outside where there's a guy with a bow and there's a ton of other dudes, and shit hits the fan. And I don't know what came over me, guys, because I didn't want to do what I did, but I'd seen this route a couple times, so I kind of knew it a little bit. You know, a lot more than some of the people who were playing it blind. And I just decided to run. And I started running. The Turtle Knight did his big hammer in the air. I ran straight past him. A little fun fact, his club looks a hell of a lot like the Garl Vinland, is it the Brampt, I think it's called. It looks a lot like that to me. Ran past him, ran past the two dudes. One of them hit me with an arrow. It made me flinch a little bit, but I could still run. Got to the door, opened the door. You know, got hit by another arrow, crossed the bridge. Knew immediately if I run to my left, I can go away that way. So I run past there, I kill the archer. I run up to a gate that's in like a corner, and there's an item, but it's locked. I turn around, and I've got like 3 or 4 dudes following me. So my first thought is, you know, I can do this shit. I can run past these guys for days. I've done plenty of this in Dark Souls. And luckily enough, none of them tagged me, so I managed to run past them. And I was getting a little bit cocky, and I ran round a corner, ran round this corner, and immediately there was like a red cloud of particles. And before I knew where I was stood, 2 Red Phantom Standard Hollows were there, and a Red Phantom Turtle Knight. And it was just that immediate moment of panic and like, Jesus fucking Christ, this is crazy, I'm gonna die. So I run past them somehow, run into this corner where there's this big wooden structure with a soul on it, and then they start walking towards me. And I'm in this moment where it's like, what the fuck can I do? I've got to run, I can't fight these because I'm not good enough at this game, and the character has been intentionally nerfed and made to feel really, really weak, and that's against standard dudes. So red versions of standard dudes, I know how these games work. Red versions means really, really strong, really, really high life. I'm not going to be able to do this. So I run past it, and I see there's an opening on the right. I go into it, and there's a bonfire. I'm like, oh, thank God, a bonfire. I go up to it, I light it, and then I forget you've got to sit down at it, because, you know, I'm sat at this booth playing this game. Behind me there's the entire crowd at the convention walking past. There's people watching, you know, I've got headphones on, it's a new game. I'm not nervous or anything, I'm just perhaps conscious of my environment, and I just brain farted, and the Red Phantoms start walking towards me. And I'm quite a vocal player when I play. I don't really care, you know, if there's people around me and stuff who I don't know. I'm not afraid of being embarrassed. So I was talking, I was voicing my reactions and stuff. And I was like, oh God, it doesn't cancel spawns. So I thought I'd hit the bonfire and they'd just disappear, and they didn't. And they're walking towards me all fucking menacing and evil. And I'm like, oh shit, I didn't hit the bonfire. And immediately I'm thinking, it's going to be deactivated, I'm going to die because I'm an idiot. And it doesn't deactivate. I hit that bonfire, I warped to another place, and nothing at all stopped me. So the coolest new thing that I bumped into on my travels with this demo, you can hit a bonfire when enemies are present. It no longer cock blocks you from hitting the bonfire, which is really good news. And these things were super close too, so I'm hoping it stays true that even when they're closer, it'll allow you to hit the bonfire, because if it doesn't, I will be very, very sad. But I hit the bonfire, which takes you to the run to the Mirror Knight. And as I've mentioned, I wasn't going to fight the Mirror Knight, but I decided to speed bomb the first section. And you know where you are if you've seen the videos, because when you're in a very thin, narrow corridor that leads down, and there's a bunch of statues, bunch of pillars and columns, and at the end there's a very menacing looking mage who looks a lot like the Death Scissors on Devil May Cry, you know, with the skull and everything. And I know the pillars are going to come alive because there's 4 guys that come from there, and they're really strong enemies. They're a little bit like Darth Maul with the spinny attacks. And I ran past all of them. I ran past the sorcerer, I hit the fog. I'm like, I'm going to go and fight the Mirror Knight now, this is it. We'll just fight him, see what we can do, see if we can beat him, see how hard he is. And for some reason my character turned around, and I have no idea why at the time, so I am just stunned, because everything I've just ran past is now within inches of kissing my neck. And I'm like, what is happening? I hit the fog, what's going on? And I get gangbanged by everything in that room, and I die. And I'm baffled, I'm sat there just, you know, incredulous, like, what the fuck just happened? So I must have done something right, and I'm thinking to myself, I know I pressed X to enter that fog, this is bullshit, you know, this game hates me, type deal. So I run back down the corridor again, I hit the fog, and it does it again. I'm like, what the fuck is happening? I'm hitting the fog, let me in. And luckily enough, I only took a couple hits and I went through the fog. But there's a really important lesson to learn here, guys, and if you're like me and you're conditioned to do a certain thing in Dark Souls, this ain't gonna work. So what I do in Dark Souls is I press X more than once to enter the fog just in case, you know. I've had those moments where people are chasing me and I've needed to press X, you know, because I've been kind of panicking, and it puts you in an animation where you're invulnerable. So we all know now that in Dark Souls 2, you're not invulnerable. You're vulnerable in all animations. So when you bash X, when you press X to enter the fog, it starts your animation. If you press X again, it cancels it. So you're just back to being stood there like a twat. So when I was bashing it, I was commencing entering and then stopping. And what happens is, I think you're only vulnerable for the first few frames of going through the fog. Because I'm pretty sure that, like, just as you're passing through it, you're fine. Don't quote me on that, but there were times when I could have swore that I was going to get hit and I didn't. And I never got hit going through the fog, aside from the time when I got gangbanged, which was unique, because a lot of the people around me, when they did get to the Mirror Knight, all of them were getting smacked before they got to the fog. But I went through the fog, and I started fighting the Temple Knight. I completely, you know, betrayed what I said I was going to do, and that happened, but I'm talking about that in a different video. And because this one's got really long, I'm going to have to cut it here, guys, and this one's going to have a second parter, because that was only my first session. I queued again for a second session, and I'm going to speak about that in the next one. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you're enjoying this as much as I did playing it, and you take care now.